Yeah,
And then
streams live. Oh yeah, of course,
yeah,
live camera. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then all I do is just go to the whatever the YouTube thing. Um, which I always forget how to get to the it's like yeah, it's just view on YouTube. There we go. Um, yeah, so then we just take this link and we throw it everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, perfect. All right. So, um, I was gonna ask, do you see the number of viewers up in the like within the video frame, like in the top left?
No, I
There's
do
like a
not. But I also don't like looking at those sort of stats anyway. I like
okay,
to just
cool.
talk, thinking
I
this
was
is a
just
private chat
curious
and people
because
listening.
yeah, I prefer that too. I was surprised that other folks couldn't see it, so um I was wondering if that's just like a permanent thing. Um yeah, so I am slowly going through all the different docs. I'm kind of going about it in an interesting way, and I was curious to get your feedback on this. So what I'll do actually is that I'll hit up like one of the LM tools. I personally like
Hmm.
Claude, so I'll go to the Claude chat or like Claude.ai, and I'll be like, how do I implement, toggle like an Expo app that can toggle between dark mode and light mode via Nativewind, right?
Hmm.
It'll spit out the whole thing, and like 50% of it is wrong. Um, but I think it's important to um, like we can't change yet immediately how the LLM will spit stuff out, but we can catch people at the points where they go looking or like the issues they go running into to try to like course correct, right? So um, there's a couple different ways to generally implement like color toggling. Um, so first of all, as far as this approach, do you have any feedback on just that approach in general? My baseline assumption is a lot of people are going to go about like discovering native wind in this way.
Uh, so is this the for color toggling inside your app, like the best way to do it, or
Yeah,
just in the
well, we
docs?
can we can get to that one of like how
Yeah.
we want to suggest people specifically do that, but I'm specifically speaking to do we want our like first class approach to be like what are you going to be exposed to when you go talking to an LLM about how to use native wind or how to use tailwind in React Native? Or should the primary approach be sort of like what you see in Google when you go search it in Google kind of thing, right? Um,
I think most people would be Googling stuff at this stage. Because the LMMs are going to get confused between Tailwind and Nativewind, I think.
so far, I haven't seen that confusion. Um,
Okay.
but okay. Um, okay, I'll take a look at what the Google one is probably a little more straightforward, and it leads, fortunately, them to our docs pretty immediately, which is good.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so then as far as how we actually go about implementing or suggesting folks go about doing dark mode, light mode stuff um, within, I want to say just an Expo app, but I feel like it should also, I guess, cover Expo Web, but not anything else. And the nice thing about Create Expo app is that it includes a lot of that stuff. But the problem is that
Hmm.
it also includes a lot of other stuff. Um, and included in that other stuff is like use color scheme and stuff.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I'm just sort of like, because that's going to be a confusing element. Is if you start your app with Create Expo app and you're like, oh, I want to use dark mode, but then you see this hook, use color scheme and stuff. how do we want to drive that journey forward? Like, what do we want that experience to be for the user?
Yeah, so I've actually been thinking about this a bit while testing.
Hmm.
And like part of the feedback has been like, because we're trying to reduce the API surface, right?
Hmm.
And color scheme has always been interesting. So previously in the current version, um, the way color scheme works is there's actually like two separate color schemes, right? So there's the device color scheme and then your app color scheme, because that's kind of how it works on the web. Your browser has whatever your system's on, like whatever your preferred default, light or dark.
Hmm.
But then you have like a toggle on top of that. So that's why on the web you can do like light, dark, or system.
System.
So
Yeah.
light, dark is I want to force it to be this, and system is I want it to be whatever. Um, but while reviewing the API with people, it's like React Native doesn't quite have those sort of concepts. We do, but there's already like a standard API for that with the appearance.get color scheme and appearance.set color scheme, where you
Hmm.
could set it to like light, dark, or null. And null, it doesn't fall back to a system, it just sets it to whatever the system value is. So there isn't like these two color schemes competing. And so I'm thinking we might actually do a very last minute change while we're doing this beta testing and actually possibly get rid of the use color scheme hook and just recommend people use the React Native color scheme APIs to change the color scheme. We'll still
Okay.
have the hook in, but we might just deprecate it in favor of just explicitly using the React Native APIs instead, just to kind of reduce our API surface even more and make less like Nativewind type APIs.
Okay, so I guess I'm confused. Are you speaking specifically to changing the Create Expo app template, like baseline thing, whether it includes that hook, or are you speaking
I just
to?
from Nativewind v5 might deprecate that hook in favor of using the explicit API instead.
Mm, okay, um, interesting. So,
Because I think we might get rid of this concept of an app color scheme and a device color scheme because we abstract that away.
mhm.
This is only for native. So, sorry,
What's the
no, no, I'll go
justification
first.
behind
Uh,
removing that layer, like that distinction?
I think it
Just
just
that it's
gets,
confusing.
yeah, and people like, why do we have a hook when there's a inbuilt API that already does it? And I think just having these like we have a hook because we have this extra concept of like the dual color schemes, and I don't think that translates very well to native. I think it works well on the web, um, but I don't think it translates well to native, and it doesn't translate well to maybe React Native. And so we've often said that like Nativewind is kind of like bringing the web to React Native, but I feel like maybe in this instance we should kind of keep this core API of React Native the same, and we shouldn't be like overriding too much and changing this concept. So
I
I
think
think,
unless we're bringing something to the table, I am inclined to agree, right? Like unless we're
yeah,
making up for some sort of shortcoming. But if we're simply just like mapping to provide the same functionality, um,
it used to provide extra functionality on web, but I don't think it was being utilized very much. So I think it's probably cleaner if we just remove it and streamline it a bit more.
okay. So that means that for version 4 documentation, um, we would have that hook remain, but then
Mhm.
leading into version 5, we'll just have a completely separate, different documentation for how we suggest people go about implementing light mode, dark mode type stuff.
Yeah, so this is just for switching between light mode and dark mode.
Hmm.
Um, so to switch it or access the value, I think it's best if people just use the official API for it. And I think
Would
we'll
we
still
then?
go.
Yeah,
Sorry, go.
I was just curious then, would we link out to the React Native
Yeah,
docs then as the best way to do that then? Okay.
I think so. Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Okay. I'll take a look. I think if the docs there are sufficient, I as many like I feel like advanced more advanced like React Native folks, like I haven't read through the React Native docs in a while. Like it's been a minute, but if they're good then yeah, I'd feel comfortable with that. The only thing I just want to make
Mm.
sure that folks have available to them um is Unistyle's sort of implementation of this is um it presents almost like an animation between the light and dark mode, which I really like. Makes it a smoother transition, but rather than a more like abrasive flashing one. Um,
Hmm.
which I think a lot of folks who use Nativewind right now tend to complain about that transition. Um, so I think regardless of what we end up doing, um, I should have like a we'll have like an app representation of it, right? Whether bolt.new or whatever. But some sort of template basically that people can just drop into and play around with. So um yeah, I think that'll ultimately be the solution. But ideally, like you said, React Native's documentation has everything on how to do this, and we won't even have to think about it.
Yeah. So the transition between colors and getting that automated transitions in iOS, which I'm assuming you're talking about, because I think Android still flips between the two. It's just iOS.
Mhm.
That's because it's using not flat colors. I believe it's using platform colors, and platform colors are controlled in the native layer of the device, and iOS has that natural, like when you go from light mode to dark mode, gradient switching between platform colors built in to it. So you can do
Mm,
this in Nativewind if you set your colors instead of it being an RGB value to being a platform color value. Um, when you then go from that way, you don't actually need to do light dark in your app. You can just set it to a platform color and then use the platform's light dark value for that.
that is certainly very good, but I think if we're going to be positioning ourselves as that whole mantra
Yeah,
of the patterns that you're familiar with from web, like a lot of people are going to be coming in with the baseline expectation that they're going to use the light and dark utility classes. um
the hard part there is we would, because we are at a different layer to uni styles, so they're doing it in the C layer,
mhm,
or in the native layer, and we do it in the JavaScript. So that would require our components to be animated components. We would have to change everything to
everything.
be animated, um,
Hmm.
which is a big ask. You also maybe don't want everything to always be animated in that style for light dark. Um, So, like, sometimes you might actually just want it to flip straight away and not have that animation.
Yeah, I as someone who's like, I think native feel relies very heavily on
Yeah.
those subtle animations. I'm personally pretty skewed towards that. Um, I think I think I'll probably play around with it, and see what feels right. Ideally, there would be an option for both with some kind of like walkthrough. It might just be worth like a dedicated kind of video, right? That speaks to both approaches. And then be like, here's the benefits of one versus the other, and here's where you might consider one versus the other, the pros, cons.
Yeah.
And then let people kind of go their own way with it. Um, but for native wind documentation purposes, like the API end of things, is like I think we just need to maintain a consistent way that we do things, right? And so if we're trying to rely heavily on the idea that like come with, you're going to come with your patterns that you know and love from with styling with Tailwind. We
Hmm.
want you to feel at home here with this, right? And if that's our thing, then that's going to inform what we're going to suggest. And I think we should stick consistent to that idea. Um, but then if they're looking for those animations, then you know that's sort of
Yeah,
this like extra case type thing.
it's a bit of a tricky one. We'll have to have a think about it. But like the easiest way to do it is just create your own view component that defaults to having transition background color and a default text that has transition color on it. So that when you do switch from light to dark, you get those transitions um, built into it. Like that's how you do it on the web. If you wanted to transition between light and dark, you'd have a component that has the transition styles on it that you use everywhere.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting one. How to handle it.
Mike's only
I'll
switched.
again. My AirPod died.
Yeah.
While going through it. And unfortunately, I don't have my pod mic and my studio headphones anymore. It's going to be a couple weeks before I get back to that. So we're going to go one AirPod in the ear type situation and see how this plays out. Yeah, I just want to make sure people aren't confused. That's the key. And first and foremost, consistency. So that's going to be consistent approach, consistent, like predictable to the patterns is the number one thing. And then we do edge cases, and you can provide more resources for anyone interested. Like I said, maybe there's a video potential in there to really like go into the nitty gritty of like why you might take different approaches and how even React Native as a whole handles this differently. So I'm going to start basic and simple and just focus on version 4 with what exists right now. And I'm going to rely on the light dark stuff for now with the utility classes. And then as we, start using version 5 internally a little bit more, I'll come up with something separate for that ideally links just out to the React Native documentation. Yeah, that seems like the best path forward for this. Similarly, like typography, introducing custom fonts. Is anything with respect to that changing into version 5?
No, unfortunately, that's still a little bit of a sore point, but that's also because it's a sore point in React Native in general.
So do you want to just like talk about that for a bit? Like, why is it a problem?
Because how fonts load on the two platforms is different. So the way fonts load in Android is very different to iOS. Like iOS will be looking for, so one font file can have like many variants inside of it, where a variant is like not just the different font sizes, but like this is the bold, or this is the italic, and this is bold italic, and all the other things in between. While on Android, you can only have like it looks for different font files for each of the variants. So there are ways to like make Android only look at one file to create this multivariant file for Android, but it requires you to kind of understand jumping into like the Gradle stuff and setting up the configuration so it loads the fonts in the correct location. By default, React Native just like if you want font Helvetica and then we want the bold version of it, it looks for a file called Helvetica-bold to load that font. So you just kind of like you got to kind of like, and Expo kind of like makes this a little bit easier with Expo fonts to make it load a little bit nicer. But the problem there is then like all these fonts kind of need to be loaded at runtime before the app, and kind of Expo is the best kind of doing that at the moment, and I'm not too sure how to like bring that into Nativewind
Well,
and just not be like just use Expo, and then like
I think
telling people how to do it outside of that is just a bit difficult because it's not very well documented on how to do it. And so what happens if you do it yourself and you do it incorrectly, you'll have maybe a font that works for different sizes, but then the variants don't work on like Android or iOS just because you've set up your font files incorrectly. You know,
Mhm.
it's not something we're doing. We're just telling, hey, React Native, this person wants this family, this size, this variant. Um, but to use the fonts the way they are, like this way, it's a bit difficult. Like traditional React Native, like going back 5 years ago, people didn't even really use font style. They would just select different font families, right? So you'd load up all your fonts, and then you would just, if you wanted the bold one, you'd just load the bold font family because that was easier than having to deal with all the fonts. And so you would just pick the font family that had that variant encoded into it. But obviously that doesn't work well with the Tailwind thought that wants to be using font style.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit of a messy situation where there's no like one golden bullet. See, this works on the web well because you can just load up like I want this to be these like 5 font families, pick one that works. And those font families can have all the variants and everything encoded into it perfectly fine. All the font files work fine on the web. But iOS and Android, it's a little bit more pickier about how they work.
Well, so on the one hand, there's an opportunity perhaps to just implement an opinionated take, factoring in for there's no golden bullet thing, but at least there's
Yeah.
some measure of consistency. And again, maybe that aligns, the favored approach is to align more with like at least for the most part, the patterns people are used to, what they expect in terms of working with Tailwind. I definitely think that there should be another video for this one to explain why the hell are custom fonts so annoying, not just like, with React Native in general. But I think that for the most part, I think we can make a baseline assumption for now, at least, that for the most part, when people are using Nativewind, they're using it for a mobile app, and more specifically, they're using it with Expo. And I don't think that it would be completely off base, given that we offer Expo installation instructions as well as like frameworkless, that we just say like, if you're using Expo, just follow this guide to make sure your fonts are loaded in, and then we build off of that then further. Whereas for frameworkless stuff, we link to something else that instructs, or otherwise, like I could probably throw something together. But yeah, I think addressing just the mobile first and being consistent with that is a strong start. And that way we can get something closer to a golden bullet, but just like with a more constrained scope, right, of the problem.
Yeah. Well, the React Native approach has kind of changed since we wrote the docs. And now React Native says you should be using a framework. So I think in light of that, like we kind of just say like, hey, here's the Expo docs for the framework. Here's how to use it. If you want to use framework less, like the React Native docs don't have anything on this subject. Like only Expo kind of documents this. This is the hard part for frameworkless, is there is no like vanilla guide for this.
No, certainly. I think working with Margello, working on Ronin stuff, right? The thing I tend to see is that a lot of advanced folks have just this familiarity with React Native without a framework that allows them to navigate the space without the need for a guiding framework that's going to hold their hand through everything. And I think especially for those folks, we don't want to leave them in the dark. That if there is something we can provide there, an effort should be made. And I think a lot of reliance can be placed on Expo for, like I said, for the say loading the fonts, right? There's a guide for that with the splash screen stuff and all that. So most of the weight, I think, can just be placed on that. But I don't think that the solution is for, like I said, just given the amount of clients that I work with who are just like pretty, like, I would say it's 50-50, like Expo, React Native, just like frameworkless, which is surprising, frankly, but that is what it is. That I don't think it would serve our reputation well to, be like, oh, well, React Native suggests you use a framework, and since you're not, like, you're kind of left on your own. They probably will be fine regardless, like the folks who choose to do that, the Wild Westy kind of folks. But yeah, the same way I just think it's important to offer installation instructions for frameworkless React Native. Yeah, so I'm just creating more work for myself to do, frankly, at the end of the day. So this is the entire argument is like, okay, are you going to do more work? Are you going to do less work? And I'll do more work. Yeah, this is a particularly it's surprising to me how this issue is such a thing when it's like pretty fundamental, like to the extent that like color theming is fundamental, to the extent of like REM, like what you use to actually define the font size, or those are pretty fundamental aspects of styling. Yeah, we get most of our complaints about those two things, and then the only other thing that folks complain about predominantly is box shadows.
Yeah.
So, and I actually don't even remember the thing with box shadows. What's going on with box shadows? Aren't they just like not supported or something?
So are we talking about box shadows or drop shadows?
It could be either one of them. I don't remember, but I think I've seen complaints about both. I think one isn't supported, or wasn't supported until very recently.
Okay, so box shadows are only supported in the new architecture. So this is part of the reason why V5 is going to require the new architecture, just to stop people getting caught with this and not with this. And they're only partially supported on iOS. So I believe they're fully supported on Android and partially supported on iOS. And I think that's the same for box shadow and the drop shadow property. Actually, let me just double check the docs. I am fairly confident actually that drop shadow isn't even supported on iOS. Filter.
We get complaints for folks who are implementing like Nativewind UI who are like, I want to remove the shadow, and I'm just like, no, that's actually how you natively should implement it. So you probably shouldn't do that.
Okay. Yeah, so drop shadow is Android only. iOS doesn't support drop shadow. This is documented in React Native, and it's only on the new architecture as well. Typically, when people want a shadow, they want a drop shadow. So that's like the when it takes the shape of the thing you have, it just doesn't put like a solid rectangle around the thing that you want it to be. So that's the difference between a drop shadow and a box shadow. A box shadow is always a box around it.
Do you mind dropping a link to that in the chat, or did you just close the window?
No. I've still got it here. Okay, so these are always fun to explain.
Yeah, I feel like this is just one that I should probably like externally link to highlight context on.
All right, let me actually put it in the public chat.
Be careful with the posting from all thing, which you should be fine. It'll just post it from a number of different accounts or something, but it's like whatever. Everyone will
I'm
see
just
it.
gonna- I think this is going into the YouTube chat. I don't think I have a choice of where it goes.
You got this. Whatever you do, I'm sure you'll do a great job, Mark.
Oh, for some reason it's not working. Failed to post.
Do you want to just send it to me and I'll post it?
I'll put it in the private chat.
There we go.
There we go.
There
That one
we
works.
go. All right.
So
I'm gonna
that's
post
the
it.
docs for the drop shadow, and then this is the docs for a box shadow.
Okay, so that's drop shadow. And then this is box shadow.
And then that is not to be confused
Oh my god, dude.
with shadow. So React Native now has 3 different shadow props that you can use on things. Shadow is the one that we use currently. So box shadow and the filter properties, they're new. We currently only support shadow, and shadow is the buggy implementation that everyone has problems with that we've been using in React Native for like the last 10 years now.
Is it going away? Like, is it going to be deprecated?
I believe it's just recommended not to use anymore.
Okay.
If you read the React Native blog, I believe when they released these, they kind of detailed what was wrong with the existing shadow. But essentially, it's very quirky. It doesn't work consistently across the platforms. I believe it works best in iOS, but even then, it only works in certain conditions, like when you have like a background color set and your view is not nested in a certain way. And then on Android, some of the props don't behave consistently. Yeah. Anyway, that's why they're recommending people not using it and using these new ones instead. But you need the new architecture to use these new properties. So in V5, we are switching to both of these. So these are different things in Tailwind. Like in Tailwind, you can choose whether you want to use a box or a drop shadow, and that will allow you to alternate between these two.
Okay. So there's going to have to be some notes around this, certainly, in the documentation to highlight the discrepancy, like why the difference here.
Yes. And also there needs to be a lot of notes that these basically they're not properly implemented in iOS as of yet in React Native. The React Native docs go into this a little bit to talk about that they are coming soon.
I have to assume Nishan is on this issue.
Yeah, I'm not actually too sure who's working on it. But yeah, I'll link the Tailwind docs for you as well.
Oh, wow. We got Trucidaire in the chat. What's going on? So this last one is, what was this link?
The Tailwind docs. And then you got drop shadow.
Tailwind docs for box shadow. Oh, okay, I see.
And drop shadow. So drop shadow isn't technically a style. Drop shadow is a property of filter. So filter is the style that you apply, and then a filter that you can apply is a drop shadow.
I see. Okay. All right. So with the new architecture, it's going to be...
Oh, they've actually updated the React Native docs that actually go into detail.
Oh, great.
About the differences between all 3 of these. And
so we'll just link to that. This is even easier.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize they actually updated the docs because this was not documented for a little while. Hey, more links.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right. This is the last link then for this specific topic.
But yes, we'll have to clarify all of this.
Why all the different shadows, we'll say.
Yes, and what platforms are available and what's available where, because it's still not consistent.
I'm gonna even highlight this one. Yeah. Okay. So basically stray away from using shadow as we move forward. Focus on like box shadow and what was the other one?
Drop shadow.
What shadow?
Drop shadow. Is it
Drop
box and
shadow.
drop?
Oh my god, dude.
Yeah.
This is gonna take some getting used to. Okay. Okay. Also you said the hardest part of migrating to supporting like version 4 of Tailwind was caching. I was kind of curious about that. What do you mean by that?
So caching is a new thing that we're adding in to kind of as a performance optimization of V5. V4. Yeah. And
Migrating to V4 of Tailwind in
V4,
V5 of Nativewind.
We'll align the
I
versions
almost
properly.
had it. I stumbled at the very end.
So this is a performance optimization that we're bringing in, and it's probably the part that we're debugging the most. So essentially now, styles at the moment, styles are calculated in every single component. So if you have the same style string used on multiple components, every single component rebuilds what that style object should be. Which is a bit costly, especially because most of your text will look like the same text all over the place. So now what we do is we actually have a shared cache between all the components. And basically, if they're within the same sort of style context, they don't have to recalculate their styles. So it kind of like saves a lot of the rendering time. Like the rendering time of cache components is about half the time of a normal component. So this is a really big speed up. It's a little bit hit or miss in terms of how it works, because it's something that we probably won't document too much or tell people there. We'll just work on it behind the scenes. But it's a bit tricky to implement because styles can change based upon different things, like the context of the component and the state of that component as well. So, for example, if you have a color that's from a variable, that variable can be inherited from its parent. It could be inherited from a style that's on the component or an inline style as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that variable might rely on other variables if that could change. And so we kind of need to create these like style contexts, and we just cache within those contexts. And anytime a variable can change that's affected, it creates like a new context. And just like getting that working properly is a tough thing. We're not like other styling libraries where applying the same styles in all contexts results in the same thing. Because of the variable aspect, it creates this extra layer of complexity that we have to handle. So that's been definitely the hardest part with the testing, is getting that all working properly. And the problem is not like getting when it works right, it's when it works wrong. It's like when you get stale styles or things like that. When it gets a cache hit, when it's not meant to get a cache hit, is been the tricky part there.
So is this something that has become possible through Tailwind 4 that we're
No, this is just a re-architecture that I'm doing.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with Tailwind 4. It has more to do with Nativewind 5.
Yeah, just fixing up the problems with Nativewind 5.
Okay. Interesting. Then does that mean that like we should expect that in the beta release that should come, in the coming weeks?
I'm thinking about actually just turning it off and getting the beta out at this stage, and then enabling it again in the future.
Like the caching stuff.
Yeah, just because it's holding up the beta at this stage. So the idea for the beta is I want to get it out with the new Expo SDK. The beta for that should be dropping. Wait, have we got?
There was a Canary release already, I think.
There's a Canary, but the beta hasn't dropped yet.
I
believe. I think we have a couple of Canaries out as of a couple of days ago. Yeah, so we have a Canaries. They're being published kind of daily now. and we're expecting the beta to, once everything stabilizes, will probably actually be end of this next week. I'm assuming.
Okay.
But we'll see how things go. And I want to kind of get up the beta for that. So I might just be turning off the caching.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then we can enable the caching again.
If it's not tied to version 4, then it'd be nice to have. But what I was going to ask is, when you do turn it on, like, is it reasonable to expect that for us debugging other people's problems, that folks are going to start running into issues where things aren't changing as they expect them to? I think the answer to that is yes. But the more important question that follows is, how much of a smoking gun is there to indicate why that might be happening? Like, how easy is that for us to debug? Yeah,
that we're having with the testing at the moment, because the cache relies basically on the render tree, and so people just can't now send you like, oh, these styles are not working. It's like they're not working because of the context that it's in. So I think what we might do is disable caching for the beta, and then in 5.1 add a flag that people can use to optionally turn it on.
Yeah.
And then have some people opt into it. Early adopters test it out. And then that way also, if they have problems, they can turn it off and they can toggle the caching to work out if it's a problem with that or not.
So basically, here, bud, we're going to wait for him to complain about everything not working, and he'll be leading the charge, the unsung hero.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that's the best probably approach, both in terms of just getting things out, as well as allowing folks to opt in or whatever about the thing. So I am still a little bit concerned about our ability to debug stuff, but
yeah, this definitely has made it a bit harder to debug things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, are there other notes about version 5 to be aware of?
No, that's kind of it at the moment. But just before we kind of like run out of time as well, I thought I'd quickly go over Tailwind 4.1 came out this week. I'll link that in chat. We can just kind of quickly talk about this. It's still not letting me post there.
I gotcha.
So we'll be implementing some of this stuff, hopefully. And some of them we just can't do. So the first thing is like text shadow utilities. So we can finally support these. So we've kind of had support for this for a while, but we're just going to change it to these official APIs for text shadow colors. So this allows you to do text shadow, like what sort of colors. We can support that. That's going to be great. The mask elements is going to be interesting. So this won't happen for V5. This will be a future thing that we explore. There is a recommended package from Expo for masked views, which it's documented here. So the way we handle these sort of styles is behind the scenes. Nativewind, when you use one of these styles, we naturally what we call upgrade your component to these different components. So, for example, if you use an animated style on a view, views are not animated. So we change your view into an animated view for you. I think we might evaluate this package to see if we can do the same. So if you use a mask on a component, can we on a view? Can we change your view to being a masked view as well? So that way the mask styles will work. So that'll require some exploration to see if that's possible. What else was there? Compatibility of all the browsers. We don't need that. Fine-grained text wrapping with overflow wrap. So unfortunately, React Native doesn't support overflow wrap, I believe. The only overflow properties that it has is visible, hidden, and scroll. So we can't unfortunately add overflow wrap. If people like that, they need to get onto the Yoga GitHub repo and request that as a feature request. Colored drop shadow. Yep. React Native supports that. So we'll be adding support for that as well. The pointer styles. React Native doesn't currently support these, even for devices that support a pointer. So unfortunately can't support these. And then the last ones are kind of baseline last and safe alignment, which are new Flexbox stylings that have come to the web in the last year or so. React Native doesn't support these, so unfortunately we can't support them as well. So yeah, all in all, this update, it doesn't bring much to React Native. Kind of just formalizes text shadow and the drop shadow properties. And the mask one, I think we'll look into it for the future, but there's no sort of like cool new features here that's really for Nativewind, but we'll be updating to use this version anyway.
Yeah, I guess we should probably do another pass as well, which I guess will be part of what I'm doing to highlight the things that are not supported to factor in for, Tailwind version 4 stuff. Yeah. Okay. I mean, still really cool that they're releasing that, they've added support for this stuff though in Tailwind. But yeah, not gonna be very substantial for React Native stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. On the doc side of things, coming along pretty well. Nikita is changing up the styling across all of the content and stuff. Still working on that landing page. I'm needing to get a content map basically to Nikita, and then he'll kind of just do it all in one go. And that'll largely be it. I'll probably throw analytics also on the page, so we have a better sense of things like, unique visitors and what what are they trying to do, where are they going, more or less like a heat map of the docs, so that we can better understand like where we need to focus our attention or where people might be hung up. Obviously the installation page is going to get a lot of attention, but I realized I really do want to have a CLI that allows you to just sort of like, initialize Nativewind into an existing project. I know that it's becoming simpler with version 4, but I just think it's a pattern that people have grown accustomed to. And the argument that was utilized before, I think doesn't really hold any water anymore, which is that like you don't want to go through and like modify people's stuff. You don't know how it's going to work. Like that's mattering less now because of the removal of the content array stuff, or not like removal, but it's not necessary. Yeah, just for folks who have existing projects, like you shouldn't need to initialize a new project with a boilerplate template just to streamline, using the thing. At best, you could make that argument for the first time you use the library that it's helpful to understand. But after that, you got to be, if you're jumping into a project and you just want to get rolling with Nativewind, let's not burden you with the installation instructions. You can follow them if you want; they'll still be there. But that's my thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll work on that in the future. I think there's a lot of work to do before that, but it'd be good if we can get there. We'll see how people go with the simpler setup. There's like 2 less steps there. We're more aligned now with the actual just Tailwind itself. So it might also benefit as well if we just have like an Expo config plugin. It just does it for people as well.
Yeah.
So just tap into Expo directly. So yeah, but I think we'll have to look at that in the future.
Okay.
I'm also unfortunately running out of time. I've got to duck off in a little
Yeah,
bit.
no, I mean we're done here basically, I think. So cool. All right, then I will catch you next week, and I'll keep you posted on the doc stuff.
All right, cool. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah,
I'll
have a
catch
good
you on
one.
that. All right, see ya.